Well, hey there, happy innovators. How are you all doing? Long time no podcast, but here we are. Like I promised, episode number 100 of the Singularity Podcast. And let me tell you, when I started this podcast back in 2017, if you would have told me that the Singularity Podcast would get, up to 100 episodes, I would have been so happy to hear that, because when I started out, I really had no idea, what the future was going to be for the Singularity Podcast. Like, would I be able to continue doing it? Would there even be a reason to do it, for the next 3 years? And it took me, about 3 years to get to episode 100. But I'm proud of the fact that this podcast has gone this long. And even though the audience is relatively small, it has grown over the years, but, it is, compared to other podcasts that are out there, it's relatively small, the audience is, and I'm fine with that. Of course, I would always welcome, more viewers and, more listeners and that kind of thing. But I am happy overall with how things have gone so far. And I'm happy with what the Singularity Podcast has become. And over the years, I've had, different comments come my way about the podcast, people telling me how much they like it, that my voice is very calming to them. The subject matter is usually different or weird. And, that idea of putting the music behind my voice and everything. There's, some people have told me that they'll listen to my podcast when they're falling asleep, that it makes them feel calm and at peace. And, I guess, to some people it might be considered an insult, right? To have people tell you that they fall asleep to your work, But in my line of business, really, it's kind of a compliment. If I can make something that's like so calming and so chilled out that it makes people like want to relax and, even sleep, well, it's not such a bad thing now, is it? Especially nowadays with how crazy everything in the world is right now. And I'm not going to talk about that stuff today. And that's not because I was recently banned on social media or something, because the subject matter that I shared was too sensitive for some people, which I totally find hilarious. Like, the fact that anybody would even care, that I was talking about COVID or something, is so funny to me. Like who cares what I think? But, I guess I kind of feel like a little bit like more legitimate now, now that I've been canceled on social media. I actually have some worth, I guess, right? I guess what I'm saying must matter on some level. And like I say that tongue-in-cheek, okay? I'm half kidding, because really it's just so stupid. The idea of me being censored, can be viewed two different ways. Like, one, I'm an artist, right? So, I should be inherently insulted and angered by the fact that, I can no longer be on Twitter or something, But on the other hand, it's kind of like I was saying before, it's kind of like an affirmation that, somebody's listening, So I'm not too bummed out about it. I do think it's weird. And, censoring people, like censoring speech and those kinds of things, like, especially political opinions or something, it's so silly, because anybody who listens to my podcast, at least for any length of time, would know that I'm really kind of not on one side or the other, And I guess that's kind of like what I want to talk about in this podcast today, considering that it is the 100th podcast. Okay, so it's a milestone for me as a podcaster and as a creative person, as an artist. 100 is a lot, it's a lot of talking and a lot of subjects and film editing, video editing, text, a lot of audio editing and all that kind of stuff. But I also wanted to talk about this idea, of being a solo artist, the singularity, a single person. It's not a team of people. I don't have people on payroll that edit things for me or whatever. Anything and everything you get from Pipe Choir Records, that goes from the music, the artwork, the, t-shirts, album covers, podcasts, books, illustrations, anything that I do comes from me. I don't have any partners that help me out with the creative stuff. Now, you, my listeners, okay, that my wife does help me out in some ways, but that's usually with the stuff that's like post-production, the things that are not creative, the more technical things like social media and the internet and all that kind of stuff. I do my share of that, but really that's where my wife steps in, right? So, it is something to kind of pause for a moment and think about, this idea of being, like a lone wolf, a single person, a single artist who's doing different formats, different mediums and everything. And, kind of like, I guess, what I would consider to be the importance of that, at least in my life, and it does kind of, in some ways, at least kind of cross over, the idea does anyway, of, being in a environment socially or politically or whatever, where this idea of being an individual is kind of being discouraged. There's a lot of talk about group think and having to belong to a group that has an ideology or a belief, and you're either on this team or that team, and I'm a libertarian. I'm somebody who takes the best idea from the left or from the right. It doesn't matter to me what side it comes from, as long as it's like the better idea, at least in my opinion, right? So I'm neither Democrat or Republican. I'm not red or blue. I'm kind of like right in the middle. I'd listen to both sides, fairly, openly. And, sometimes one side makes more sense than the other, but I still remain singular. I don't belong to a group, okay? And no matter how much arm twisting you do, or how much coercion there is, or fear or threats or whatever, I am going to remain an individual. And, really, as an artist, I can say, having done this for 50 years, I was encouraged to be an individual, by family, friends, and other artists like my peers. Being part of the group was something that was looked down on, belonging to a group, an ideology, one group of thought or one school of thought, right? So, I find myself here in the year 2021, this crazy year, where a lot of the rhetoric I hear, a lot of the talk is, this group versus that group and vice versa. And here I am in the middle, stuck in the middle with you, right? But that's true, right? That's where I'm at. And I'm proud of that, and this podcast, along with all the other stuff that I do. But this podcast in particular is kind of like my opportunity, or at least I see it this way, okay? It's kind of my opportunity to express my singular point of view, okay? Now, some people will poo-poo that. They'll just ignore my opinion, and I'm fine with that. I don't care. That's probably why I get so little attention, right? Because there's just not that many people that are dialing into what I have to say, but there are some, okay? And like I've said this whole time, okay, like, it doesn't matter to me if there's only one person listening or there's a million people listening. It doesn't matter. Like, as long as there's that one person, it's not just me in an echo chamber just talking to myself, then I'll be happy to put out podcasts. I'll be happy to take the time and, talk a little bit. And now, 3 years into the game, 100 episodes in, what have I learned? What have I learned from my experience doing this podcast for as long as I have? And with as little attention as it's gotten, because it's not, I'm not mainstream. I'm not this big popular thing, and I doubt that it will ever become that. I'm not sure that it ever could, because the subject matter is, pretty weird or pretty narrow, But I've learned over the course of time, okay, in case you're wondering, right? I mean, we are here, so I'll just say it, but I've learned how to talk into a microphone. And that's something that sounds silly, probably, to most people, but it really isn't. I mean, it's a skill in and of itself. It's something that you learn over time, the do's and don'ts, the things that I prefer for my voice, and, what to talk about, what to not talk about, how to say it, having a sense of humor, all those things that I would want to represent in a podcast. I've learned all this stuff. When I first started out, I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I knew how to put a microphone up. I obviously knew how to read, but, it was only maybe 4 or 5 episodes into the Snowflake 33 podcast, the podcast I had before the Singularity Podcast. It was only about 4 or 5 episodes in where I just threw away the script, and for better or for worse, and I think it's for the better, personally. I think that the idea of talking freely and openly and leaving in all the kind of like blunders and mistakes, like the and the and the knows that I say, and the right, and I do that all the time. And I've had people tell me that are close to me, okay, family members have told me that I stutter, and that I should delete that, I should get that out of there, and I should clean up my podcast. I've had, suggestions like that. And you know what? I think about it for maybe like 2 seconds, but it's like, no. I don't want it to become, okay, something that's so polished, and so pristine. It's not really like that. We don't talk like that. People don't talk like that. We there's mistakes, and there's stuttering, and we all do it, right? So while my peers, my fellow podcasters out there in the world will go through with a fine-tooth comb and they edit all the errors out, and I edit some of my errors out, so let's be clear about that. But for the most part, now when I do a Singularity podcast, I approach it really a lot like being a DJ. I put the microphone up, I just start talking and do what I do. Just whatever comes out. I might make some notes here and there, but for the most part, really, it's me just talking. That's all it is. There's nothing special about it. There's nothing magical, or it requires no real skill other than, like I said, how to talk into a microphone and, how to maintain kind of like a standard of what I want. And perfect is not what I want, And, what do I want? I guess I would say I want it to represent like the better part of me, I said to a friend not too long ago, it's really, in some ways, it's become kind of interesting to really try to live up to the person that I've become in the podcast. Not that it's that difficult, but, I'm not always upbeat. I'm not always kind. I'm not always patient. I'm not always happy. I'm not always, into talking about strange things or something, although I usually am. But do you follow what I'm saying? I think you probably do. Like, there's a certain amount of positivity that I hear in my own podcast when I listen to them myself. And I do, occasionally go back and listen to what I've done. And I gotta say, I think I've gotten better at it. It's taken me a long time, a lot of trial and error, trying different things and experimenting with different ideas. And some were really stupid, and some wound up really kind of changing this podcast, permanently, forever, And I guess, in the beginning when I started out, it was because I really felt that I had something to say or something I wanted to say. Now I think it's more about, I think there are some people who really kind of want to hear it. Those 5 or 10 happy innovators out there in the world that are, tuning in to this podcast and tuning into the music I make and kind of starting to dig a little bit into my catalog and, what I have available to the public. Actually, somebody left a comment on one of my things not too long ago, and they said something about like the Mike Bostwick presence online is something they had just discovered, like Pipe Choir and the PC3 thing, and they had just discovered it, and like what a rabbit hole to go down. There's like a lot of work that I've put out over the years, and I gotta say, I forget, honestly, I do. I forget sometimes, that I've been doing this for as long as I have, and there's so much music I've made, or so many different ideas I've had, whether it's videos or music or, podcasting, whatever it is. There's all these ideas that I've put out that are still floating out there in the ether, And I don't know, I guess, like I said, I forget, and I get reminded, and this person was kind of commenting, like, they look forward to, like, digging through all the stuff I've done. And that really, I get comments like that, right? And it's like, it makes it kind of like worth it. It makes all the stuff that I do worth it. Because, that is the goal of the artist, is to communicate ideas to people. And if you're lucky enough, you get some feedback, you get some kind of compliment, or somebody acknowledging that what you did was good and has value to them, Speaking of which, I just recently, I think it was yesterday, I got a donation, from somebody, from one of my fans, and it was a substantial amount of cash, and kind of surprised a little bit, like out of the blue. It happens, like, even though I'm giving my stuff away for free, like, I allow people to use my music or whatever for free, every once in a while, I'll get somebody who just takes it upon themselves to send me a donation, and I don't ask for money. You know that. I don't. I never have, and I never will. I don't have a Patreon thing, or, I'm not constantly asking for money. I have never asked for money. I do sell things. I sell records and stuff, but anything I sell is available for free, with the exception of t-shirts and stuff. But, the music and all that, like everything else is for free. And it always will be, as far as I'm concerned. I've decided a long time ago, and I own this stuff. I own the rights to all of it. So it's going to be what I want it to be. And what I want it to be is free. Just like you and just like me. See, that's how songs are written. Right there. Bam! That's how I want it to be. I want it to be free. Just like you and just like me. See? That's amazing. I got to write that down. Hang on. Staring out my window. It's raining like cats and dogs. Tropical storms blowing through my area, and the trees are just going crazy, and I'm just sitting here acting like an idiot. Just talking, right? Just talking, just shooting the breeze. Maybe that's what I should call the podcast, shooting the breeze. But I don't think so. I'm going to get a sip of my coffee, so hang on one second. And I would suggest, keeping with tradition, if you do have a cup of coffee, that you might want to take a sip yourself. And if you don't have a cup of coffee, now might be a good time to run and go get yourself one. And anyway, bottoms up. I got a to-go coffee today from Dunkin' Donuts. I think they make the best coffee in the world. I don't know. Dunkin' Donuts, they make the best coffee. Anyway, so, I wanted to talk a little bit about what I have planned for this episode, this 100th episode of the Singularity Podcast. So, I'm going to kind of break down for you what I had in mind. I did take a long time, I know, getting this all together, but I wanted it to be special, I knew, like in the back of my mind anyway, that, this podcast would be permanent record. And many years from now, maybe, hopefully, if I'm lucky enough, I'll look back and I'll listen to it, and it will mark the time that I'm in right now. And I really, I take it seriously. It's a creative endeavor of mine, and it's a milestone, and I'm proud of it. So it's going to be something that I put a lot of thought into. And so what I've decided to do is maybe kind of like stretch out this episode into like maybe 3, 4, or 5 episodes. Okay, or elements, I should say, and so what I'm going to do is maybe like devote like a week or two into, releasing the elements of this podcast in its entirety. And it's not going to be just one, bit of me talking. It's a lot of stuff that I've put together for you to enjoy. Not all of it will be, under the Singularity Podcast. So what I have planned is something like this. I'm going to release this podcast that you're listening to right now. Okay. And then after that, you're just going to have to stay tuned and see what I come up with. But it's going to be a busy week. Maybe a little bit longer than a week, and we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But there will be music, there will be video, there will be maybe some interview footage. I know I did have some fans that had asked me to do some kind of visual, video where I'm talking. I thought about that a long time because I think that's something that I would have wanted if I were listening to somebody's podcast after a while. I would want to see what they looked like and all that kind of stuff. So I took that to heart, kind of thought about it a little bit. So we'll see what I can get together in that department. But some, music, some new video, some new bits of talking, some new interesting creative things. It'll be like a week-long extravaganza from Pipe Choir Records, all in celebration of the 100th Singularity Podcast. So, my happy innovators, embrace your individuality, reject this idea of groupthink, belonging to a group. Be yourself. Be an individual. Think for yourself. And, don't let outside forces influence your way of thinking and what you believe, And, man, get a microphone and start doing a podcast, All you happy innovators out there. It's so easy to do. It's so simple. You don't need to know anything. You just have to just get started. You have to decide to do it and just start doing it, I hope that, in years to come, we'll see some of that, Some of the happy innovators will say, I used to listen to the Singularity Podcast and I started something on my own and blah, 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 blah. Here I am. That would make me so happy, to hear other creatives and other interesting people because, everybody has a story, right? Everybody has a story. Doesn't matter what walk of life they come from. It doesn't matter how much money they have or don't have. Everybody has a story. Behind each person is like an ocean of life and experience, I know I'm repeating myself, but you gotta listen. Like, it really does ring true and it makes sense, think about that, really. If you walk through life treating people as if they all have, an ocean of meaning and experience behind their life. You see the person standing in front of you. You don't see the many, many years of this and that and hungry and starving and feast and famine and money and no money, rags and riches, right? Everybody has a story. Sad, happy, discouraging, encouraging, right? And all you got to do, is just grab a microphone and just start talking. If you talk enough, like I have proven, if you talk enough for a long enough period of time, people will eventually begin to listen. And I'm proud of that. I did that all by myself, I did it on a whim. I did it because it was something I had the idea to do, to try. And I did it, and it just worked out. And now I can't imagine my life without the Singularity Podcast. I can't imagine it. So, anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it. Stay tuned, my happy innovators. You have a lot of work that I've done coming your way for your entertainment, because that is why I'm here, is to entertain you. That's the purpose I have in life, no matter how small that group of people is. An audience of 1 or 1 million makes no difference. It's why I exist. It's why I'm here. It's my sense of purpose, is to entertain and to, maybe get us all thinking a little bit about things. Maybe things that we normally don't think about, right? Like, I guess maybe to make us all maybe a little more thoughtful, if not anything else. And, enjoy your coffee and enjoy what I have put together for you as a thank you. A week's worth of material and new things for you to check out, and it's going to be exciting. So just keep your ear to the ground, and I'll keep my nose to the grindstone. And I will be talking to you soon, my happy innovators. I'll be having some fun. I hope that you're doing well. I hope you have a great weekend. And with that, my happy innovators, remember, because you got to remember, if you want to keep what you've got to give it away. Take it easy, everybody, and stay tuned. Great things are coming your way. Peace out. Okay, happy innovators. You know what? I almost forgot. I'm going to drop some music at the end of this podcast here. So let me see. What will I share with you today? Okay, I'm going to share with you today an idea that I have. I haven't released this yet to the public, really. This is kind of like a one-off from a project that I was working on a couple months ago. It's a live version of the song The Argument by Pipe Choir. And I guess it's kind of a long story, but I can break it down for you as quickly as possible. I make music with PC3, and a lot of that music I use what they call white noise, like the sound of ocean waves crashing, or the sound of wind, these, that's white noise, that kind of sound. And unbeknownst to me at the time, like in the beginning, when I started to use white noise, I didn't know or didn't realize that it is something, that sound is something that appeals to people who have Asperger's disease. Like people who are on the spectrum will benefit for some reason from listening to this music. Well, I've known that for a long time now, and you can go through my back catalog and find tons of music that have that kind of stuff, that kind of sound, because I like it too. The sound of the ocean makes me feel calm, right? But this idea of white noise is something that I was thinking about, like what other forms of white noise could I come up with? And then it kind of occurred to me that really when you listen to an audience, a large audience especially, like cheering like in a stadium or a massive area, a massive space, that sound is this white noise sound. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting to switch out the sound of ocean waves or the sound of wind with the sound of an audience? And if you remember, I did a song called Ode to Spirit. It was the second track on the TLMS record, The Last Major Sin. That's the name of that record. So track number 2 was Ode to Spirit. And so I had the idea to put this sound of a cheering audience behind the music. And it was kind of like one of those moments, I guess, where, like with Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, the commercial where the chocolate accidentally gets dropped into the peanut butter and then this magic combination is, discovered. Peanut butter with chocolate. Oh, who would have ever thought it would taste so good? Well, that's kind of what this was like for me. Like the sound of the audience behind my music completely changes the energy of the song. It's strange to listen to. And it was like in a way, a way for me to live out like that fantasy, of having a large audience. Like, imagine what it would be like if pipe choir would have become famous. What if pipe choir had become a stadium band, or an arena band, right? This vision, this dream I have in my mind, but like not anywhere near reality or the possibility of being a reality, right? So I get this opportunity to hear what it might sound like, and get a little bit of the feeling, of like, wow, that's what it could have been, like all that could have been, but it didn't happen, So I started to play around more and more with that idea, like grabbing different songs I had and putting the audience behind it, and this idea of making like a fake live album, like would it be good enough or sound good enough to convince people that it might be real, or would it be enough would it be good enough and sound realistic enough for my audience to imagine like what it would be like to be there at the concert, and maybe they would get the same feeling that I get, and yeah, that's a bit of a reach, but that's how my brain works. Like, why not try it? Why not just do the experiment and see what kind of reaction it gets? And I can't remember too many times in my musical career where I was as satisfied with an experiment as I was with Ode to Spirit, with the live audience behind it. So what I'm going to share with you is a cut from a live concert, recording of pipe choir, right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like a live recording of pipe choir playing the Argument, a song that I like a lot. And you'll see if you get the same feeling I get when I hear that audience and the cheering and all that stuff. Even though it's virtual, it's fun to use our imagination, isn't it? I think it is. So check it out. Pipe choir circa 2020 from the forthcoming, live pipe choir album. Here is the Argument. Hope you enjoy it. Peace out. And like I said, stay tuned all next week. There's going to be all kinds of fun. Trust me, I got some pretty fun ideas that I'm going to share with you, right? We're going to have a good time. Peace out, everybody.